Why does she get everything, even when we worked equally hard? The words escaped before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted saying them. But as my mother arranged yet another tray of gourmet cupcakes on the counter, I couldn't hold back the frustration that had been building for years. "She deserves it more, Emma," my mother replied, not even bothering to look up at me. "Lily's always been more dedicated to her studies. You've always had other interests." The casual dismissal stung deeper than if she'd slapped me. I stood there, my medical degree still framed and fresh on the counter beside me, trying to process what I'd just heard. All these years, I had worked relentlessly, overcoming every challenge on my own. And yet, my parents continued to favor Lily, even though we'd both walked the same path and accomplished the same goals. "Mom, we both graduated with honors," I said, my voice steady, but my hands trembled ever so slightly. "We had the same GPA, the same grueling study schedule. Why is it that Lily's loans were paid off, but none of mine?" Finally, Mom looked up from her task, her eyes meeting mine with that all-too-familiar expression of mild disappointment. It wasn't anger, it wasn't guilt, it was disappointment, as if I were asking a question I should already know the answer to. "Lily doesn't have a wealthy mentor like Dr. Henson taking an interest in her future," she explained coolly. "You've always had opportunities, Emma. Opportunities Lily didn't have." The words hung in the air, and I almost laughed. Dr. Henson hadn't just handed me opportunities, I had earned every single one. She had become my mentor because I had worked tirelessly in the lab for 80-hour weeks while Lily was skiing in Aspen with our parents. The opportunity my parents had given me was to fend for myself. And I had done just that, without their help or encouragement. "So, I'm being punished for having my own mentor?" I asked, the hurt seeping into my voice despite my best efforts to stay calm. My father walked into the kitchen, his arm around my mother's shoulders, putting on his usual reassuring demeanor. "No one's punishing you, Emma. We're just being practical. Lily needs more help than you do. You've always been more resourceful." Resourceful. It was the word they used whenever they justified their actions. The word they used when they chose not to attend my undergraduate research presentations, but instead flew across the country for Lily's volleyball tournaments. The word they used when they bought Lily a brand new car for her 21st birthday, while I got a generic gift card from a gas station. Resourceful. The word that never felt like a compliment. Tomorrow was Lily's debt-free celebration party, a lavish affair they were throwing for her. The invitations, of course, celebrated Lily's achievement, with no mention of my own. It was as if everything I had done had been erased. Lily's debt was cleared, not through her own merit, but through my parents' financial support. They were throwing a party to celebrate their choice, not her achievement. "I have an early shift at the hospital tomorrow," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I grabbed my bag, hoping the motion would help me avoid the truth. "I'll be there, though." Mom's voice softened, and I could tell she was concerned, but it wasn't for me. "Will you still make it to Lily's party? You know how much it means to her." "I'll be there," I promised, though my stomach twisted at the thought of attending another celebration that was supposed to be about Lily and not about both of us. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Henson. "Need to speak with you urgently about the Anderson Fellowship." Big news. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking into my stomach. This wasn't just unfair, it was about to become public, and I had no way of stopping what was coming. Lily and I had always been on divergent paths. We were born only 6 minutes apart, but it felt like we had lived in different worlds. According to family lore, I was the quiet one, the one who spent hours reading and working hard. Lily, on the other hand, was the social butterfly, making friends effortlessly and excelling at sports. Our parents attended every single one of Lily's soccer games and dance recitals, while my science fair victories barely earned a pat on the head. By the time we both decided to pursue medicine, our paths were already set. They were thrilled for Lily, but when I told them about my own plans, the response was different. "Are you sure you can handle it, Emma?" they asked, concerned about the workload and the pressure. Medical school wasn't just about being smart, my father warned. It's about grit and determination. Lily has always pushed herself harder. But as I went through undergraduate studies, I maintained a perfect GPA while working part-time to cover expenses. Lily, meanwhile, struggled in her classes, requiring tutors and extra help that my parents provided without hesitation. When it came time for the MCAT, They paid for her prep courses, while I was expected to study on my own with free online resources. Despite all this, I never resented Lily. She was my sister, my twin, and I loved her. But as much as I loved her, I couldn't ignore the stark reality that I had always been overlooked. I had always had to work harder for the same recognition she received effortlessly. And yet, our parents were blind to it. Now, standing in the kitchen, facing my mother's indifference, I couldn't help but wonder, when would they see me for who I truly was? When would they stop treating me like the invisible twin and finally recognize the accomplishments I had worked so hard for? Tomorrow would reveal the truth. The day my parents' public favoritism would finally hit its breaking point. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. From the moment we were born, Lily and I seemed to have drawn different straws. I came into the world first, quiet and observant, while Lily followed 6 minutes later, announcing her arrival with a strong, healthy cry that immediately captured everyone's attention. According to my parents, I was always the introspective one, more content with books than with people, while Lily thrived in the spotlight, making friends easily and excelling in sports. Our differences, though subtle at first, became more pronounced as we grew older. While Lily joined every sport under the sun, soccer, basketball, swimming, gymnastics, always the center of attention, I spent hours in our local library, getting lost in books about everything from astronomy to biology. My world was made of facts and figures, quiet reflection, and hours of studying. But none of that seemed to matter in the eyes of our parents. No matter how hard I worked or how many science fairs I won, my achievements were often brushed aside with a quick, "Good job, Emma," before they turned their attention back to Lily's latest trophy or victory. Lily's accomplishments were always celebrated. Every ribbon she earned at her soccer games, every performance in her ballet recitals, was met with cheers, high fives, and constant praise. Our parents were always there, front row, beaming with pride. I was happy for her, of course. She was my sister and I loved her. But as I stood in the background, watching the adoration pour over her, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of isolation. I worked just as hard, if not harder, but it was like my accomplishments barely existed in their eyes. It started off small. A report card with straight A's for me barely got a second glance. Meanwhile, Lily's report card, which might have had a B or two, was cause for a celebratory dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town. "Good job, Lily," they would say, practically glowing with pride, while I quietly tucked my perfect grades into my backpack, the praise I craved always slipping through my fingers. As we got older, the gap between us seemed to widen. We both went to high school, both maintained excellent grades, but I was the one staying late at the library, grinding away at homework and projects while Lily attended parties, went on weekend trips, and, of course, continued to excel in her extracurriculars. Our parents were thrilled by her social life. "She's going to be successful, Emma," my father would say with a smile. "You're going to do great things too, but Lily has a real gift for people." At first, I tried not to resent her. After all, she was my sister, and I didn't want to begrudge her success. But the subtle signs of favoritism from our parents were impossible to ignore. While Lily was getting extra help with her homework when she struggled in school, I was expected to handle everything on my own. When Lily's soccer team made it to the state finals, our parents threw a huge celebration, inviting the entire neighborhood. When I won a science competition that could have led to a full scholarship at a prestigious university, they barely mentioned it at dinner. Despite all my hard work and success, the spotlight never seemed to fall on me, and I began to wonder if I was invisible in the eyes of my parents. The love and pride they showed Lily felt as if it were infinite, while I was left standing in her shadow. The more I excelled, the more isolated I felt. It was as if the only time I was noticed was when I failed to live up to the impossibly high expectations they set for me, expectations they never set for Lily. I was quiet about it at first, trying to swallow the growing bitterness and resentment. I worked harder, thinking that if I achieved more, if I kept pushing myself, maybe, just maybe, my parents would see me too. But nothing ever changed. Their attention was always focused on Lily, and I was left behind, my successes quietly dismissed. It hurt, it really did, but I learned to keep it to myself, to bury it deep inside. After all, what was the point of complaining? Everyone else seemed so happy with the way things were. But deep down, I resented the imbalance. I resented that no matter how much I achieved, it would never be enough to earn the kind of recognition that Lily received effortlessly. Emma and Lily had always shared a dream to become doctors. From their childhood days of playing doctor and patient to their high school years of excelling in biology, the idea of helping others through medicine was something they both deeply desired. When they reached college, their paths seemed clear. Both Emma and Lily decided to pursue medicine, believing that they were on the same journey toward achieving their dream. However, the reality of their decision was far more complicated than they had anticipated. As soon as Emma and Lily declared their intentions to become doctors, their parents reacted differently. Emma's parents were filled with concern. They feared that the pressure of medical school would be too much for her, as she had always struggled with balancing her academics and extracurriculars. They worried about the emotional toll that such a demanding career could take on her, questioning whether she could handle the intense workload. Lily, on the other hand, was encouraged. Her parents were confident in her abilities, having seen her excel throughout high school. They saw her as the more natural candidate for medicine, believing that she had the intelligence and resilience to succeed without issue. Despite these contrasting reactions, both girls were determined to prove themselves. Emma, who had always been the underdog, didn't let her parents' doubts discourage her. She knew that if she wanted to prove them wrong, she would need to work twice as hard. Emma worked part-time throughout her college years, balancing a job at a local cafe with a rigorous study schedule. She spent late nights at the library, pushing herself to maintain top grades while keeping up with her work responsibilities. She couldn't afford the luxuries that other students had, like expensive prep courses for the MCAT, but she refused to let that hold her back. In contrast, Lily's journey seemed much smoother. Her parents, eager to support her, paid for her MCAT prep courses, tutoring sessions, and study materials. They ensured that she had everything she needed to succeed, often going above and beyond to make sure she was comfortable and well prepared for the demands of medical school. This support made a significant difference in Lily's experience. While Emma worked tirelessly to stay on top of her studies, Lily seemed to glide through the process with ease, aided by the resources her parents provided. Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of unfairness as she struggled on her own, knowing that Lily had access to so many advantages that she did not. The turning point came when the MCAT approached. Emma, despite her best efforts, felt overwhelmed. She had no prep courses, no personal tutors, and no financial backing to secure the resources she needed. She relied on free online resources and study groups, but it didn't feel like enough. On the day of the exam, Emma arrived at the testing center, nervous and unsure of what the outcome would be. In contrast, Lily had the luxury of knowing that her parents had invested in the best prep courses money could buy. She was confident, prepared, and ready to ace the test. Emma's anxiety only deepened as she realized how different their circumstances were, but she reminded herself that she couldn't give up. Despite the disparity in their support systems, Emma's resolve remained unwavering. She worked harder than ever, determined to push through the lack of resources and prove to herself and to everyone else that she was capable of succeeding on her own. The pressure, the late nights, and the uncertainty only fueled her determination. While Lily seemed to coast through the process, Emma's strength came from her resilience, her ability to keep moving forward despite the odds stacked against her. She knew that, ultimately, her journey would be defined not by the advantages she lacked, but by the relentless effort she was willing to put in to make her dreams a reality. Medical school was everything Emma and Lily had hoped for, and yet it felt so much more difficult than either had imagined. The long hours of studying, the pressure of rotations, and the constant demand to prove their worth took a toll on both of them. Though their paths were similar in many ways, Emma always found herself working harder to gain recognition. Every time she made progress, there seemed to be another obstacle in her way. Meanwhile, Lily, who had always been the favored one in the eyes of their parents, seemed to glide through the challenges with relative ease. Their experiences, though rooted in the same profession, were distinctly different, and Emma couldn't help but feel like she was constantly fighting to be seen. As Emma excelled in her studies and rotations, it seemed like her achievements went largely unnoticed. She had become accustomed to working harder than her peers, always pushing herself to do more. Her research, which she had poured hours of dedication into, seemed to go underappreciated, While Lily's successes were often celebrated by faculty and classmates alike, Emma couldn't deny that Lily was talented, but it was hard not to feel overshadowed by the attention her friend and former college roommate received. Where Lily was praised for her leadership skills or her ability to connect with patients, Emma's accomplishments were always treated as quiet, understated victories. She wasn't the one to get the limelight, no matter how hard she worked. Emma's breakthrough came unexpectedly. After years of hard work, her research on a novel treatment approach in cardiology gained attention from a well-known medical journal. She was invited to present her findings at a major medical conference, a moment that could define her career. For Emma, this was the culmination of years of dedication, a validation of her relentless pursuit of excellence despite the lack of external support. The opportunity to present her research was the recognition she had been waiting for, and she couldn't have been more excited. But that excitement was tempered by the realization that Lily, once again, would be in the spotlight for something unrelated. As the weekend of Emma's presentation approached, Lily also received attention, but for an entirely different reason. Lily had been nominated for an award in recognition of her work as a volunteer coordinator for a medical outreach program. While Emma was preparing her presentation for the conference, Lily's parents were lavishing her with praise, taking her out to celebratory dinners, and making sure everyone knew about her latest success. The contrast between their experiences was striking. Here was Emma, on the cusp of a major academic milestone, and yet it felt as though her success was nothing compared to the praise Lily was receiving for something that seemed, at least to Emma, far less significant. The weekend of Emma's presentation, she found herself silently battling her own feelings of resentment. She knew that the medical world was vast and competitive, and that the recognition she had earned was meaningful, but it was hard not to feel overshadowed by the attention Lily continued to receive from their parents. Emma found herself questioning her role in this dynamic. Was she wrong to feel bitter about the way Lily's accomplishments were always celebrated with such fanfare, while hers were often overlooked? Was it unfair to feel resentment toward Lily, the person who had always been a source of support, but who also seemed to be the one who effortlessly received everything Emma had to fight for? The internal conflict gnawed at her, and Emma struggled with whether she should embrace her accomplishments without seeking approval, or if she should continue to fight for the recognition that seemed to always slip out of her grasp. In the end, Emma realized that her journey had always been about proving something to herself, not to anyone else. Her accomplishments, even if they were not always celebrated in the way she wished, were valid. She had earned every moment of success through her own hard work and dedication. Whether her parents saw it or not, whether Lily was in the spotlight or not, Emma understood that her value wasn't tied to the recognition she received. It was rooted in her commitment to her dream and her unwavering determination to push forward. Dr. Henson had always been a steady presence in Emma's life throughout medical school. He was more than just a mentor. He saw something in her that no one else seemed to. While many of her classmates, including Lily, received praise for their charm or natural abilities, Dr. Henson recognized Emma's work ethic and quiet brilliance. He knew that Emma wasn't the type to seek the spotlight, but he believed in her potential. After Emma's research made waves in the medical community, Dr. Henson pushed her to apply for a prestigious fellowship that would set her apart in the field of cardiology. He had connections and offered his guidance every step of the way, ensuring she presented her work in the best possible light. When Emma received the news about the fellowship, she felt a surge of emotion. It was the kind of opportunity she had worked for her entire life, one that would elevate her career and validate all the long nights spent studying and sacrificing. She had always pushed herself to go beyond what was expected, and now, at last, her dedication was being recognized. The fellowship would provide her with the resources, mentorship, and platform to make a significant impact in her field. Emma sat in stunned silence after the announcement, trying to process what this meant for her future. It was a moment of triumph, but it was also tinged with a quiet sadness. She had worked so hard for this, but somehow, it still didn't feel like enough. The bittersweet feeling grew when she shared the news with her parents. They were preoccupied with Lily's latest accomplishments, who had just been offered a position at a highly respected clinic due to her own volunteer work and leadership skills. Emma's parents, proud as they were of their daughter, barely acknowledged the fellowship. They congratulated her perfunctorily, but their focus remained firmly on Lily. It was as if Emma's success was just another step in the background of their ever-shifting attention toward Lily's journey. Emma felt invisible. This achievement, one that had taken years of struggle, determination, and sacrifice, was hardly given the recognition it deserved. Instead, her parents showered Lily with praise, as if Emma's success was expected, but not extraordinary. As Emma stood at the crossroads of a life-changing opportunity, she realized how much she had been overlooked by her family. This fellowship, this opportunity to shape her own destiny, was everything she had ever dreamed of, but it also felt like a culmination of years of being dismissed. Emma had always been the one to put in the extra effort, the one who worked quietly behind the scenes, never asking for praise, only seeking to prove herself. Yet, when she finally reached a place where her hard work could be celebrated, it felt as though no one was paying attention. The conflict inside Emma was undeniable. She wanted to feel proud of what she had accomplished, but the lack of acknowledgement from her family stung deeply. The moment of truth had arrived, and it was both a victory and a reminder of how often she had been overlooked. Emma knew that this was her chance to prove not only to her family, but to herself that she was more than just a background figure in her own life. She had earned this moment, and while it was bittersweet, she was determined to seize it. Lily's graduation was a moment of grand celebration, orchestrated by their parents to mark her achievement of becoming debt-free. The party was nothing short of extravagant, held at a lavish venue with all their extended family and friends in attendance. Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness as she watched Lily be the center of attention. The entire evening was devoted to her accomplishments, from her volunteer work to the clinic position she had secured. There was no mention, not even a casual acknowledgement, of Emma's own accomplishment, her prestigious fellowship, which she had fought for on her own. It felt as if her success was invisible, overshadowed by Lily's seemingly effortless rise. Despite the turmoil brewing within her, Emma made the decision to attend the party. She had worked so hard for her place in medicine, and she couldn't let her family's disregard for her accomplishments keep her away. But Emma promised herself that she would stay out of the limelight, not wanting to steal any of Lily's thunder on a night that was meant for her. Still, she couldn't ignore the undercurrent of resentment that grew as the evening wore on. Her family's focus remained solely on Lily, and Emma was relegated to the background, sitting silently at the edge of conversations, watching as her sister was showered with praise. It was during a quiet moment that Dr. Henson, who had been invited by Emma to join the celebration, suggested that she announce her fellowship at the party. He believed it was the perfect opportunity to share her success and gain the recognition she deserved. But Emma hesitated. She knew that the entire evening had been planned around Lily, and she didn't want to overshadow her sister's moment. Emma wasn't sure if her own success would even be welcomed in such a setting. She worried that bringing it up would only draw attention to the unfairness of her situation, further deepening the divide between her and her family. The internal battle raged inside Emma. She had worked for years, pouring her heart and soul into her studies and research. This fellowship was the culmination of everything she had fought for, yet she felt reluctant to claim it in the face of the family's clear favoritism. The question lingered: should she stay silent, continuing to hide her achievements in the shadow of Lily's spotlight, or should she step forward and demand the recognition she had earned? Emma knew that, regardless of the family dynamics, this moment was hers. The dilemma was whether or not to finally take the space she deserved. As the party continued, Lily's attention began to shift. At first, she had been completely immersed in the celebration, enjoying the attention and accolades from their parents and relatives. But as the night wore on, she started to notice the subtle differences in how Emma was treated. Her sister, who had always been by her side, was sitting quietly in the background, as if her own accomplishments didn't matter. Lily couldn't help but feel a growing discomfort as she realized that Emma's successes, despite being hard-earned, were ignored in favor of her own. The disparity had been there all along, but it hadn't truly hit Lily until that moment. She had always known about Emma's struggles, but now she saw the painful reality of how their family had favored her, leaving Emma in the shadows. The more Lily reflected, the more she realized how unfair it had all been. Her parents had always praised her for her achievements, but Emma had worked just as hard, if not harder, and had earned her place in the medical world through sheer determination. Lily could feel the weight of the years that Emma had quietly borne the burden of being overlooked and undervalued. It was a realization that struck her deeply, and it gnawed at her conscience. The guilt of never acknowledging Emma's sacrifices began to feel unbearable. Without thinking, Lily stood up during the celebration, her voice trembling but firm. She spoke out in front of their parents and the guests, calling attention to the unfair treatment Emma had endured. "I've spent so much time focused on my own achievements," Lily said, her eyes meeting Emma's, "and I've never truly acknowledged how hard Emma has worked. She's fought for everything she has, and she deserves to be celebrated, too. This isn't just my night, this is Emma's too." The room fell silent as Lily's words hung in the air. Their parents looked stunned, unsure of how to react as their carefully crafted narrative began to unravel in front of everyone. Before the tension could escalate further, Dr. Henson, who had been quietly observing the scene, took the stage. With a calm and confident voice, he publicly announced Emma's fellowship and the recognition she had earned through her own hard work. "Emma has achieved something remarkable," he said, "and it's time the world knows what she has accomplished." The applause that followed felt different, more genuine. Emma, though overwhelmed, smiled as the weight of years of silent struggle seemed to lift, her efforts finally recognized in the way they deserved. It was a moment of vindication, not just for Emma, but for Lily, who had finally seen the truth and spoken out. Emma stood in the spotlight, the applause ringing in her ears, and for the first time, she felt truly seen. Her peers, faculty, and even some of the guests at the party were acknowledging her hard work, her research, and the fellowship that had been years in the making. The respect she had earned through dedication and perseverance was finally coming to her, and it was a moment of triumph. As the applause subsided, Emma looked out at the faces around her, feeling a mix of relief and validation. It wasn't just about the recognition, it was about the realization that she had achieved something on her own terms. Her parents, who had always focused their attention on Lily, were now faced with the uncomfortable truth of their favoritism. Emma's achievement, announced publicly in front of everyone, forced them to confront the depth of their actions. They were stunned, struggling to process the reality that their daughter had quietly endured years of being overlooked and undervalued. It was a wake-up call they couldn't ignore. They were left speechless, their earlier applause for Lily now mixed with a sense of regret, realizing that they had failed to see Emma for who she truly was, a capable, driven individual with her own dreams and potential. Lily, standing by Emma's side, was a source of pride for her sister. She had been the one to break the silence, to stand up and acknowledge the unfairness that had plagued their relationship. Now, she was there for Emma, fully supportive and unapologetic. Her actions spoke volumes as she stood beside her sister, proud of what Emma had achieved. For the first time, Lily wasn't just celebrating her own success, she was celebrating Emma's, too. The bond between them had deepened in that moment, no longer defined by rivalry or favoritism, but by mutual respect and sisterly love. Emma knew that the path ahead was hers alone to walk. She no longer sought approval from her parents, nor did she need the validation of others. She had earned her place in the world through her own efforts, and that was enough. The road to success, both personally and professionally, would no longer be defined by the need for acknowledgement from those who had failed to see her. Emma looked toward the future with a newfound sense of independence and confidence. Her journey was just beginning, and for the first time, she felt ready to embrace it fully, free from the weight of seeking validation. As Emma moved forward into the next chapter of her life, she found herself on a plane bound for Boston, ready to start her fellowship at one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country. It was a new beginning, one that was shaped by her relentless hard work, perseverance, and, most importantly, her belief in herself. The past few years had been filled with challenges, but they had also been marked by growth. Emma was no longer the girl seeking approval from those who never truly saw her. She had found her own voice and her own worth. Meanwhile, Lily stayed behind to continue her medical journey in Detroit, still chasing her own dreams. Though their paths had diverged, the bond between the sisters had never been stronger. The years of quiet rivalry had been replaced by mutual respect and a newfound understanding of each other's struggles. Emma was proud of Lily's accomplishments, just as Lily was now proud of Emma's. Their relationship had been tested and reshaped, and they had both come out the other side with a deeper appreciation for one another. Emma knew that this was only the beginning of what would be a long and rewarding career. The fellowship at Boston Medical was an incredible opportunity, one that would open doors to groundbreaking research and the chance to make a real difference in the world. But more than that, it was a testament to her ability to overcome every obstacle that had been placed in her way. She had earned this moment, and now she was ready to embrace everything the future had to offer. As she looked back on her journey, Emma realized that her self-worth no longer depended on her parents' approval or the recognition of others. For so long, she had sought validation from outside sources, whether it was through academic achievements, parental praise, or external validation. But now, she understood that true validation comes from within. She had always known what she was capable of, even when others couldn't see it. And now, she was living proof of that. The respect and recognition she received from her peers and mentors were a reflection of her hard work and determination, not a validation she had been waiting for. Looking forward, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer bound by the constraints of others' expectations. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but it was a road she was prepared to walk with confidence. As she took the first steps into this new chapter of her life, Emma was not just entering a prestigious fellowship, she was entering a future where her potential would be realized on her terms, and she would make her mark in the world, stronger and more self-assured than ever.